We'll just wait for a few minutes and we'll start at 9.
Very, very good. How's your day going so far, Chris?
It's good. It's good. We start a little early over here because I'm in California, and most of our team is either in Phoenix or Michigan, and so I'm always playing catch up in the morning. But I outlast them in the evening, so that's what counts.
Sure. Whiskey and cigars, Chris.
That too.
Yeah. It was a good start, but it's all going to be downhill now, Chris. I have to warn you. Right. Sorry.
Ah, and we got Sally. Good. We got a full house.
Sally!
Good morning.
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 I like that. You match.
Yes.
Excellent. I seen your Kingpin article. Brian did a great job.
I'm sure he'll be hitting up the rest of you soon.
I already voted it up on managed WP.
Good.
So there you go. All right. Anybody else, or what are we doing?
Oh, a few people watching. That's great.
Okay, very, very good. Are you watching Facebook, Jonathan? Or are you watching the chat?
I'm watching both. I'm multitasking.
There you go.
That's amazing.
He is.
What a guy.
Right, yeah.
Velcro Kitty's in the house.
That's right. No, actually, this is ADD Kitty. Velcro Kitty usually only gets me in the dining room.
Ah.
Oh, no, we've got a cat show now.
Yes.
There. We've got everything. We've got Chris Lema, we've got cats.
Right. How can we go wrong?
That's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much all you need, right? Chris,
That's all you... We've thrown everything at it, Chris. Cats, dancing dogs, you, cigars, whiskey. You know,
that's a winning combination right there.
There we go.
What about Retro Max as well? We've got the Mac Classic.
There you go.
Oh, yes. I
Come on,
see
guys.
you
I
have
thought I was doing well.
your own computer history museum back there.
Yeah. Exactly what's happening.
Right,
Yes, I don't know whether you've ever been to visit the Computer History Museum, Malik, but it's an entertaining experience. Oh, had one of those, couldn't afford one of those.
Your cat actually plays with the microphone?
Yes, she's extremely pesky. Yes, ADD Kitty, because she simply cannot get enough attention. She has a permanent deficit of attention.
That is awesome. She's like, this is not a microphone, it's a toy. And you're
That's right. This is everything exists for the kitty's benefit.
All right, John, are you ready?
I'm ready to get this party started. Okay. Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 169. Today we've got not one guest, but we've got two. We've got AJ Morris and Chris Lema from LiquidWeb. And before we get into today's roundtable, I want to give thanks to our sponsor, who is LiquidWeb. LiquidWeb's been known for years as a managed hosting company with tons of options. Recently, they've designed a managed WordPress offering that's perfect for mission-critical sites. And if you are looking for improved performance, maximized uptime, and incredible support, LiquidWeb is the hosting partner you've been looking for. Because every LiquidWeb managed WordPress customer also has iThemes Sync integrated into their management portal. And what this means is you can update several sites with a single touch. So if you sign up today using the discount code WP-Tonic33, you'll get a 33% discount for the next 6 months. Visit liquidweb.com/WordPress to get started and use that discount code WP-Tonic33. And with that, let the panel introduce themselves, and we'll start with our guests. First, we'll start with AJ. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hey, I'm AJ Morris, product manager here at LiquidWeb. I do many different things, anything from marketing to working with the development team to help shape the product.
Excellent. And then we have Chris. Chris, introduce yourself. For those who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Sure. My name is Chris Lema, and I am our Vice President of Products over at LiquidWeb, where I'm spending a majority of my time right now on the managed WordPress platform.
Excellent. Next up, we got Sally.
Good morning. I'm Sally Getch, and we have a message in the chat already. Very exciting.
Yeah.
I run WP Fangirl and also the East Bay WordPress Meetup in Oakland, California. And you will frequently see my cat on this podcast.
Excellent. And then we've got Lee Jackson. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you. You're on mute.
Unmute. I'm Lee. I run Angle Crown. It's a WordPress development agency that works with designers. So we convert designs into WordPress themes, and also run the WP Innovator podcast for design agencies, which is pretty cool. And like being on here as well.
Oh, we love having you.
Thanks, mate.
Oh, no problem. And then I want to introduce my co-host, Jonathan. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, who you are.
Oh, hi there, folks. My name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a WordPress support maintenance company.
Awesome. And I'm John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design, and what I do is custom WordPress development and local SEO for blue-collar businesses. So jumping right in, ask Chris a question that a lot of people maybe wonder. You're well known in the WordPress community. You're known as being a leader. You even have a whole website dedicated to leadership and high performance. You had a lot of options to go to a WordPress company. Why did you choose LiquidWeb, and what about it attracted you to them?
That's a great question. I did have a lot of opportunities, and I consulted with a lot of companies, and I evaluated a lot of opportunities. I think when you're evaluating, and this is for anyone evaluating any kind of job, you're looking at the mix between what do I like to do, what would deliver the most value for the organization, and where is there where is my skill capacity going to be most leveraged, right? So I think of myself much like, or my job and career opportunities, much like an asset in terms of investment, right? You want to make the most return on that asset. So I could go do something where I only use one part of my skill, but I would likely be compensated for that one part, and I would not get the benefit of the other parts. I also would potentially get bored if I'm only doing one thing of the multitude of things I like doing. And so as I was evaluating and looking at a lot of different companies, LiquidWeb had the greatest opportunity, and was offering the greatest opportunity to have the most amount of impact across the most amount of disciplines. So I currently manage the product engineering of the managed WordPress product, but I also manage the product the product road mapping and planning. So I obviously work with AJ to talk about the product management of that product. So it's product engineering, product management. I also manage the product marketing of it, as well as some of the other products that are in-house. And so that's where you look at something like this and you go, oh, I'm going to have a wealth of opportunity to have an impact. I'm going to bring all my marketing and my people leadership and my product leadership work all into one, whereas some of the other opportunities had less of that. The other thing, obviously, was LiquidWeb is not the first or second or third company stepping into the managed WordPress space, right? There's a lot of players that are already there. And so that challenge or that puzzle of being able to step into a space where there's 10 people in front of you and you go, what does it look like to enter the market late? And what do you do from what's the narrative you tell, right? What do you do from a product management perspective when you're stepping in and everybody else has already kind of defined, well, this is what table stakes are. So LiquidWeb offered me the opportunity to model out what does it look like to do that, and the challenge to do that, both of which I was excited for because I felt like I had a vision for what managed WordPress could be even 7-8 years after it was introduced, and there's still some gaps, and you go, oh, I think there's some things we can do here. So that's a long-winded answer for why I joined, but it was the best opportunity, the most opportunity, and one I was very excited about.
No, definitely. And the next question, that kind of leads into the next question that I want to ask AJ before I turn it over to the panel. AJ, in the WordPress space, like Chris said, there's a lot of people who are already doing managed WordPress hosting. LiquidWeb has been around for a long time, but they're kind of jumping into this space where there's well-established players. In the WordPress ecosystem, before you could just kind of slap the word WordPress on a lot of products and services and that could suffice. But maybe now we're entering an age of maturity where differentiation of products and services is becoming more emphasized. How is LiquidWeb seeking to differentiate itself in a market that's starting to mature?
I think as Chris said, us not being the first, second, third, fourth person to market, we've really been able to identify some of the gaps in what managed WordPress is, right? We all kind of have an idea of what table stakes is, and you see that in the players out there today. But what you don't see is the table stakes, the gaps, right? And so I think that as we start to address some of those gaps, that really is what differentiates us. We look at what type of hosting we've done in terms of a managed host for the last 15, 16 years. We've primarily focused on mission critical sites, right? Something that a site is your main driver for your business. And I think that plays well into the managed WordPress space, right? We want to focus on those mission critical sites, those sites that are driving revenue for your business.
And the other thing I'd add is I think some of what we're able to do is go into some places that other people haven't wanted to go and really still don't want to go. So it's not like I'm competing with a WP engine, right? I love WP Engine. They're fantastic. And what they say to their customers is, we will help you manage your WordPress websites. When I worked at Crowd Favorite, we had several clients who said, well, most of my site is WordPress, but I also have this database that is connected to, say, a .NET application to present content, right? How do you do that? And most hosts would go, well, that's, again, if you're in the managed WordPress space, you're like, we don't touch that. Like, that's not what we do. We do WordPress. And at LiquidWeb, you go, oh, yeah, I got no problems with that. Like, we can spin up the environment to help you run your .NET app, or we can spin up your environment to help you with your Rails app, or whatever. And so you start looking at, what does it look like to serve that managed customer that is predominantly WordPress, but also has other needs? And that's a space most of the managed players are not attempting to go after. They don't want it. So you're not even competing with those people. You're just picking up some of the places that you went, nobody ever wanted that, right? So that's why I think when AJ says there's a gap, it's a gap only in the way we define it and the way other people didn't define it, right? They just said, this is our box. We're going to play in this box. And you go, that's great. But there are clients who are outside of that box who need things, right? And so I think there's a great opportunity to kind of flush out and fill out, what does it mean to do managed WordPress today versus what it meant 7 years ago?
No, I think that's excellent. Like you said, there's a lot of people, clients and customers that need more than what's being offered in the managed, in the established managed WordPress space. So what you're doing is redefining, like, for yourselves, like, what that means to be in that space and go in the places where other people don't want to be. Lee, do you have a question?
Sure. Well, I think the gap that you're talking about, I think, are you talking more of an enterprise level sort of client? So you've got customers, you've got the WordPress website, but they may have I don't know, some sort of complex CRM product that's on Microsoft Dynamics, if that even freaking well exists anymore, and they want to connect that with web to lead or something like that. They've got some technology that's doing that. They want to be able to integrate with that, and there are a lot of limitations on WP Engine. For example, you just can't do any of that, and there's no kind of technical support with that either. Is that what you guys are saying? We are there for those guys, those enterprises, SMEs that have that sort of that need to integrate more complicated solutions or work with other platforms.
Well, you jumped to a perfect example of an extreme case, right? Where you go way up market, because you're talking about an enterprise who has Microsoft Dynamics, whatever, and you go, yeah, at some level there's that, but you can scale that way down to the mid market, right? Where someone's like, there's a flower vendor, right? They basically deliver flowers like 1-800-Flowers or what have you.
Sure.
But their entire database of flowers and availability and whatever is their own making. It's their own homegrown system, but it's a SQL Server database with a .NET front end, and it lets people, look at stuff. But the whole rest of that website was also a homegrown CMS. So when they migrated to WordPress, they're like, this is great for my website. And all of a sudden I'm getting more traffic.
Yeah.
But I have this little database that presents data based on what you search for and look for. And you go, how do I bring that over? And many hosts out there would go, well, go do that somewhere else and then do an iframe back over here. And you go, it's kind of not what I was looking for, right? So you don't have to go to Microsoft Dynamics to get this need of multi-platform, dynamics. And that's just one. When we talk about like kind of a gap, there are a multitude of others, right? We're getting ready to launch next week a feature that helps you automatically upload or automatically update your plugins, right? And you go, there's no host in the world that wants to update your plugins, right? Because they don't want to, even though this is managed care, right? And we're saying, well, manage is supposed to manage, right? It's supposed to take care of it for you. But you go, yeah, but I don't touch your plugins, because what if it borks your site, right? And you go, oh, but there's a way to solve that, right? So next week we're releasing a feature that will essentially spin up a staging environment, right? And then take photos of your website, and then do the update of the plugin, then take more photos, then do the visual diff of the photos. And if there's no difference, right, then they can update the plugin on your production. Only if you let them, right? I mean, like, only if you let us. It's an automated process. But you go, we're 7 years in and no one's been updating plugins, right? Because of the fear factor. And you go, that's legit. I get it, but it's not an impossible problem, right? So we tackled it and said, this is what we want, right? Because we know we have customers that either never update the plugin for fear that it's going to ruin their site. They're like, I know that it works with this version, so just leave it be. Or people who only update by just clicking the update button, right? They click update, and then they just hope. Like, let's just hope it all works. And you go, that's terrifying, right? So there are some places where we can step in and say, we have a way to do some of this. Now that won't solve everything, right? Photos are not the only way to tell, but it's the one that most humans interact with most, right? Where you go, did something physically change? Like you've seen sidebars that take the middle of the page and you go, so there are other ways to look at whether or not there's issues, but the image snapshots are one of the first ways to do it.
That's pretty cool. Sorry, guys. Also, though, on that, with regards to things like usability, backend stuff, that wouldn't solve that problem, would it? So are you guys looking at anything further? So, for example, I have an old plugin. It requires some old version of jQuery, which span up the latest version of WordPress. In the backend, I can no longer post pages or something like that. There are still other problems that could potentially come from that, though, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of different ways to step into this, and again, we are at the beginning, right, of rolling out a new product. But I think what we're seeing, at least the traction we're seeing from the people that I'm talking to as we're playing out this feature set, is there's a whole bunch of areas where people can still tell you today, again, 7 years into managed WordPress, I don't like this. I don't like this. This is frustrating to me, etc. Right? And that tells you, for as mature as we are, there's still room to grow. And so we're looking at those spaces and going, okay, what does it look like to be able to deliver value in that space?
Sweet.
Sally, did you have something for AJ and Chris?
I don't, but I see one of our live listeners does.
Denver Prophet.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know like how much of that was just answered in this question, but he was asking if you guys are dreaming up recipes such as Spark UL server, Vagrant et al. To the LiquidWeb team. And another thing he said in the chat is Flower Shop would also relate to my Spark UL question. He started using a plugin from WordLift for better data vocabulary, but just taking pictures won't detect plugin collisions with data management, in his humble opinion.
So those sound like many different statements rather than one question. So he's absolutely correct. Taking pictures is not going to be the only issue or the only way to solve the issue. And you're absolutely right. But it is the predominant way humans evaluate change, right? So again, we're not building a product that is purely for developers, right? I'm building a product for customers, right? And customers where these sites are mission critical. And so for them, you go, what do you do to test it, right? And they go, use my eyeballs because I wasn't doing a scan of the software. I wasn't looking for namespace collisions. That's not what people were doing. Developers will do lots of things, right? Customers will use very simple tools and methods for doing it. So we don't ever want to over-engineer a solution. So we started with taking pictures because it's a very practical way that people automating what people are already doing, yet doing it so that they don't have to do it, right? Separately, it's a Flower Shop would also relate to my Spark QL question, but I don't know what that question was. So I don't know if it's somewhere there and I missed it. But if you do have a Spark QL question, I'll see if I can answer it. And then you started using a plugin from WordLift for better data vocabulary is a statement, and yay to the statement. I don't know if there's a question there too, but if there is, I'd love to hear it.
There you go. Jonathan, anything? Unmute yourself.
Or unmute me. Just
I'd just like to ask AJ and Chris, so what do you like about the competition and what do you think they've done wrong? That be WP Engine and maybe Flywheel. What do you think are their strengths and what do you think they're not quite doing so well?
AJ, you want to take that, or you want me to take it?
Why don't you take it first?
I think they're doing a ton of stuff really well. So I want to be very, very clear. I think WP Engine and Flywheel, the two examples you just used, are fantastic companies, and they are doing a ton of amazing stuff. Everything from the innovations in the way that WP Engine has worked with their management portal and what they're doing is fantastic and has kind of set the stage for everyone else who followed up behind them. Flywheel went further to say, let's redesign some UI specifically to deliver value to people who really don't want to look at infrastructures that look like cPanel. So, and there's nothing wrong with cPanel if that's what you're into, but not everybody was, right? Or is. And so I think those guys have innovated a tremendous amount and they're doing incredible and amazing work. So I think the most important thing people don't grasp all the time is that because someone's doing great work doesn't mean there's not another opportunity for someone else to do great work, right? And that can mean that you're gonna look at different segments of the market, right? Go up market, go down market. So Media Temple, for example, recently rolled out a very high-end solution that more competes with someone like Pagely, who's doing amazing stuff too. And Pagely's going way up market, right? As they cut out more and more of their lower end offerings, you can see I'm going after the up market, which other people are like, no, I'm not going to go after the up market. You look at a GoDaddy who's going to take all of the stuff that used to even be in the pro solution, and they're pushing that pro feature set, right, with SSD drives and staging sites and all that down to $4 or $6 a month. And so there's a lot of players who segment the market in terms of spend or in terms of the complexity of the sites, and they go, we'll go up market, we'll go down market, and all of them are doing interesting and good things. So you just have to go, okay, is there a segment in that market that is either untapped, or is there a feature set that's missing, or is there a dynamic that you want to work through that becomes important, right? So I don't know that I think through or have a list of places where they're weak or not doing as well. I do know that they have their own constraints. And I want to be clear, those are different things, right? So just because someone has a constraint doesn't mean they're doing something poorly or they're weak. They just have drawn the box and said, this is what we want to focus on. So WP Engine, for example, has said, we only do WordPress websites, right? That's it. That's our bread and butter. And there's more than enough WordPress websites to do that. And you go, that's great. That's powerful, but it is its own constraint, because again, you can't help a flower shop or anybody else who has a little bit more than WordPress going on. And you go, okay, well, that's a nice place we can go to. You get into Flywheel, which has its own constraint because they started as folks that focus on designers. And so initially they didn't even have access to the database. And then they've created their own UI, which beautiful, to do certain database tasks. But there's some people who are like, no, but I want low-level access to all the things, right? SSH and PHPMyAdmin, and like, I want access to all the things. And you go, well, that's not going to fit in the constraints they've defined for themselves because they're targeting a certain kind of market. So I don't look at it as more, where's the weakness and what are we going to go after? It's more about where have they defined their own constraints, and are there other places we can step into to add value to the people who felt like another offering would make sense if it did things beyond or outside of or around what currently offers. If all we were going to do is create another Me Too product, there's no point in doing it, right? Because those companies are doing a great job at it.
What I'm hearing, Chris, as well, which kind of excites me a bit, is with WP Engine, we've got sites with clients on WP Engine, but part of the problem is there are certain services they will not activate. So, you know, there's no PHP zip archive. We can't do stuff like that. There's things that us as developers would like to be able to do for our clients, and we're very limited with WP Engine. Again, like you said, it is great, but it has set that box. It's set a hell of a lot of limits, which means often we've had to take people away to elsewhere to a non-WordPress dedicated solution. I think I'm hearing from you guys that we're kind of going to be getting almost the best of both worlds. We're getting, you know, someone who is focused on WordPress, but we're also going to get a hell of a lot more control or a lot more power, which to me as a developer is very exciting. If I've got the wrong idea though, just let me know.
Yeah. So yes and no, right? I want to be really, 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 really clear about what I'm not saying is we're going to do manage, but we're also going to let the Wild West run, and any developer can do anything, but also we're going to manage it, because it doesn't work, right? Like you can't, like the reason companies have constraints like that is because they're also trying to help tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of sites scale up and manage all within an environment. So you constrain the environment so that you control it, so that you can grow it. So that all makes sense. I think what I'm saying is there are still places for us to create opportunities and give access to things that people previously didn't have access to. Will that mean that it's the developer's dream? That isn't my target, right? It may become a developer's dream. My target is still what AJ talked about, which is those mission critical sites, right? So people who run business on their sites. So our smallest plan, I think, is $100, right? So there's a whole segment of the market that we're just not touching. But the other dynamic is there's a whole segment of the market that we're not constantly upselling, right? Tons of us have been in a situation where we've bought a plan for $5 or $10 and then realized, I think the reason I got this plan for $5 or $10 is so I could give them my phone number so that they could call me all the time to upgrade me to the $30 plan, which then they're calling me all the time to upgrade to the $100 plan. And I'm like, I don't want to run a product line that is constantly upselling you, right? So you take some of that out, which also means you take some of those customers away, but also means you take some of that support costs away. And then you go, I'm just going to start at a place where people are saying, I'm only going to spend that kind of money if I'm building the kind of product, if I'm hosting the kind of site that makes it make sense, right? So it is a different segment. The target is to deliver value to that segment. I think what that means as an ancillary consequence is that we will end up having certain features that developers might really enjoy, but that's the ancillary consequence. It's not driven by that. So I'm not building the developer's dream and then hoping to God that they bring me clients, and that those clients want to spend more than $10 a month, right? Like that's a convoluted engineering approach to building out and solving the problem. We start with who the target market is and what they really spend and what they're really going to do. And then from there you go, okay, what do we have to deliver to them? And how do we help the agencies that and the developers that help them? And then you go from there. But it will result in certain things that developers will go, huh, I'm so glad this is here.
And it sounds like as well, we've got the same target market. You know, we deal with people who are doing business on a daily basis. They want to invest in hosting, and the consequence of you serving them sounds like is going to serve us as the development agency, because we're going to have a managed service, but at least some semblance of control. So, for example, Flywheel not having SQL access was a nightmare. Anyway, I'll shut up, guys, because I'm hogging the space. But thanks, Chris.
Yeah. It seems to me the important question here is not what are the other people in the space doing badly, but what are they not doing at all?
Yeah, I think what you look for when you bring a product to market after the market's already existing is you look for where are people currently, where can customers in that market articulate gaps or challenges or things that are missing? And is a segment of that audience large enough that you can serve them? If that segment is large enough that you can serve them, then it becomes interesting to build them a product, right? If it's like 1 out of every 10,000 people wants access to PHPMyAdmin, then you go, I don't need to build a product for that one guy, right? This is the very nature of what happens when engineers build products. Is we are always doing it for that one guy, which happens to be us, right? You're like, oh, I have an itch, I'm going to scratch it. We build a product, and then no one else wants to buy it. You go, no. Start from the outside in. But there are gaps. We're 7 years in, and there are still things that when you talk to an everyday person who says, I have all these plugins, I have to update them. I don't know what's going to happen when I click update. I don't know. They tell me to use staging, but then how am I going to use staging when all of a sudden I've also updated posts, but now my staging's out of sync and I can't bring them back together? And you go, these are problems that we have known about for years, right? They're hard problems. They're not simple ones. And they're not problems that everyone wants to spend money to solve, right? Every customer would say, I want all the things and I want them all for $7. And you go, right, that's not going to work. So there's a whole bunch of evaluation and calculation you're doing to say, is there a gap? How big is that gap? Is there a segment that fits in that space that wants that and will pay for that? And is that something we want to go after? And if all those things align, then you go, let's go build it. And for us, I think we said there are still some gaps, and there is a segment of people who are doing mission critical websites that they still have features they need and they're willing to spend on it. And that the existing platforms today have, for whatever constraints they've chosen, whether it's pricing or infrastructure or support or whatever, we can go in and find that spot because of who we are and our background, and we can build that out.
Oh, I thought that was thanks, Chris, a fantastic answer. Before we go to our break, I just want to ask both you, Chris and AJ, was you really surprised when GoDaddy actually bought WP Curve? I was. I just like quickly your reflections on that.
I don't think I was really surprised. I think that they're really wanting to hit the WordPress market in a way that really helps their customers, right? And I think that their customer segment is different than ours, and they want to provide those tools. And tools in this case is a person to be able to help them, to help their customers build a WordPress site, right? And do some of the things that you guys do. And I think for us, we're looking at that as how do we become your partner and move alongside you and become a partner in that.
My take is, and I don't know if you know this, Jonathan, but over 60% of the customers that GoDaddy had, or the GoDaddy has, that pays that really low price for a monthly service, we all tell ourselves a narrative, right? We tell ourselves the narrative that they're super cost conscious and they don't spend any money and they don't want to spend any money. But over 60% of their customers that buy those low end plans still pay someone else to build them a website. Okay, so think that through, right? If you're telling yourself the narrative that they don't spend a penny, right, other than $3 or $5 a month, you're wrong, right? 60% of them were going and spending money to build the site, right? And you know who they were asking who to build the site? Think through the workflow, right? Buy the domain, buy the hosting. Who are you going to ask who should build my website? You're going to ask GoDaddy. And so here's GoDaddy sending those referrals. You remember they started building out a partner network, right? They created the Pro, that was, you know, they had Pro the product, but they also had Pro the network. And they were inviting people to sign up for Pro the network. As they're inviting people to sign up, what is it for? It's to be able to send leads out, but that means you're sending business away. Why not just buy WP Curve and keep the business right there, right? You buy a network of resources, then you don't have to send the links, the leads away, and you just say, we'll just build the websites for you. 60% of those customers are wanting to spend more money. Why wouldn't we take it from them, right? So it wasn't super shocking to me.
Why I follow the logic completely, Chris, but isn't a problem with scaling? That's the whole point of a hosting company. You can productize a service into, but when you go into a service element like that, you've got the whole problem of scaling, haven't you?
Right, which is why they probably decided not to hire one person at a time, put a manager in place, and hopefully build that business up. They bought a company that had leadership and staff, and we're already doing that same thing, right? Because that is how you scale into or step into that space. Is you don't try and organically build it. You acquire it and say, okay, when they fill out the form of who, it's no longer who, it's what, and we route them right to you guys, and you guys do your thing and make us money, right? It's a different approach to it, but it's a way to solve it.
Right. Well, I think we should go for our break, John. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's right about that time. So when we come back from the break, we're going to be talking more with AJ Morris and Chris Lema of LiquidWeb. See you after the break. We're coming back from the break, and we're talking with AJ Morris and Chris Lema of LiquidWeb. We had one question in the chat room that said, and it was concerning CXS IDS in the WordPress cloud. And this question said, even though it's coded for cPanel, have you looked at IDS in general for security beyond security plugins for WordPress?
So IDS, which I'm pretty sure means intrusion detection, but they could be referencing something else. Should never really be about a plugin. So I'm just going to give you my opinion. I'm not a security expert, but I'm friends with others who are. If you are trying to manage security on the site itself, you have already given up the fact that there's a whole bunch of infrastructure below the application level that you have left unaddressed. So the best, and I say application, I mean WordPress, but below WordPress, right? You're running that on a web server, whether it's Apache or Nginx. You're running that with an operating system like Linux. You're in a network. So there's tiers, there's layers to that stack. And if all you're going to do is try and solve it at the website level, you're skipping and missing all the rest of that stack. But the other thing you're doing is you're taking on the entire burden of performance through your site, right? You're asking your app to do the work, right? So you're spinning up CPU cycles, and usurping the performance of the site itself to kind of protect the site, and that's not super great, right? Because it's going to affect your performance, and frankly, you want to solve that at a different level, right? So if you talk to security experts, right, they will tell you that the best approach, even to WordPress security, is to be looking not at the app level, but to be looking from the network perspective, starting from the very outside and then coming in, right? And so you look at what the folks at Security have done with their what is it? It's not Cloud Moxie. Is it Cloud Proxy, right?
Yeah.
It's the name of their Cloudflare competitor, which is a proxy level that is not only doing proxy stuff and helping you with performance, but it is additionally doing intrusion detection. You look at what iThemes and even Jetpack with their purchase of Brute Protect, they're doing, where they're looking at brute force attacks, right? And they're checking to see what's going on in one part of the network and how to protect the rest of the network. So in general, when someone says, and I see this note here, I wasn't suggesting that the questioner was saying at the app level, but the way in which the question was given to me included all the way up to, are you doing more than plugins? And I'm saying the answer is never plugins, right? The answer is always at the network level and then coming into the operating system and going from there. So LiquidWeb, the managed WordPress product, is not tackling that directly, because LiquidWeb as a whole has some security folks that are looking at the whole thing altogether. And the partnerships that LiquidWeb has and is looking at for security is across the whole board, because they're running the network. Now, the good news is that LiquidWeb owns its own data centers, right? So you know how, again, every time there's kind of a network outage, there's someone who points to someone who points to someone who points to someone, and it's almost like you're looking at two mirrors that are looking back at each other, and it goes on forever, and you're just pointing forever. LiquidWeb owns its own data centers. And so because it owns its own data centers, it can control and manage the security approach and the infrastructure across the board. But it's not specific to the managed WordPress product. So I want to be clear. The answer is, A, it is critically important that you look at it from the network and OS level, far more than it is the plugin level. Secondly, LiquidWeb is doing that, but the managed WordPress product, which is what AJ and I are spending a majority of our time on, is not solving that at the specific product SKU level. We're looking at it from the overall LiquidWeb level, and they can do that because they own and manage their own data centers. Thanks for that question.
Anybody else on the panel have a question? I don't want to jump the line here.
We do a lot of multi-sites, just kind of putting it out there. I guess you guys are okay with that sort of thing?
We are in the process of rolling out some features to enable multi-site for our managed WordPress product. So it's coming in a release that will also include a whole bunch of URL redirection and URL parking set of features, right? Because multi-site, even though there's a lot to multi-site, which we already support, the specifics around if you're doing a multilingual site and how you have to, how they use multi-site for the multilingual and how you do the redirection is stuff that we're digging into and making sure that we have across all of our use cases, not just multi-site. So we initially rolled out with a little multi-site, then realized that some of our redirection stuff was having an impact with it, so we rolled it all back and said, we're going to wait for a second for multi-site. Now we're finishing up the redirection stuff and rolling it all back out. So we will be able to support not only multi-site, but then a whole bunch of other features that are related to URL redirections.
You guys are saying a lot of really good stuff. This is all music to my ears.
Well, if all we had to say was, we're doing what everyone else is already doing, it'd be a very boring webinar.
I'd like to ask a broader question to you, Chris and AJ. It's been an ongoing kind of theme on our panel show about how decisions are made in the WordPress community, you know, that recently it's linked to security, the whole thing that happened about the restless API, and then another kind of security discussion that Matt replied to. But also there's been discussion about how fundamental decisions are made. Is it really quite clear to you how decisions are made in the top echelon of WordPress? Then do you think that should change a little bit?
Wow. Softball questions is what
Yeah.
this is, right? AJ would love to answer you.
Yeah. I will say, you know, in the last 10 years or so, having been involved with WordPress, I think that it's getting more clear. You know, I look at even 3 or 4 years ago, it wasn't really clear how those decisions were made. It seems to have changed a bit. That inner circle has kind of gotten broader. But I think that there's still some transparency that can happen. And I think that as we continue to move forward, we're going to see hopefully more transparency there. When we're talking about WordPress core development, right, and the decisions that go in there, I think if you broaden the question out even further, that gets muddy.
So when we think about decisions, right, there's decisions at a whole bunch of different levels that are happening all the time. There are people who are building products that sit on top of WordPress, and those products, they're all making their own decisions, right? And anytime someone is mad about core or the pace of core or the pace of how something's going, you know, you have alternatives, right? Like you can build yourself a product. You don't have to, you know, inject it into core. And I think people think, well, if I put it in core, then everyone will have access to it. And you go, yeah, but that also means everyone will have access to it, right? So the requirements and the focus, the risk mitigation that's required for that is very different than building your own product. And so there's a whole wealth of decisions you can make to build out, whether it's a hosting product or a plugin product or a theme product. You can build anything you want if you're not saying the only distribution mechanism is either through the core code base or through WordPress.org, right? Or .com. So I think there's a whole wealth of decisions that are being made all the time that are worthy of being looked at, right? My friend Syed Balki runs WP Beginner, also Opt-in Monster, and most recently Monster Insights. But he literally created WP Forms after everybody had already created all the form products, right? And you go, what are you doing, right? And he was told the very same thing that James Laws was told at WP Ninja several years ago, going, Gravity Forms already does it all. Like, why would you get involved in the market, right? And these are folks that have, like, Ninja Forms just announced they have 800,000 people using or activating the plugin. 800,000, right? And the majority of that growth has been in the last year and a half, right? If you go back and see what the number was, I think 2 years ago, it was 200,000, right? Or even less. And so you're like, these guys have rocketed up, but then didn't rocket up like at the very, they're not old school. These are new market entrants who have stepped in and said, I'm going to go do something, and we're going to drive it, and we're going to target it, we're going to message it, and we're going to grow it. So we tend to think, it's easy to get upset that, you know, Matt is doing something at the core level or making decisions. Most recently, I saw the email or the posts and the comments go back and forth about telemetry, right? Data collection, and should we be collecting data, and then should we be using that data to make decisions about the product and core and whatever. And you go, yes, I get it, blah, blah, like all to the whole debate, I get it. But at the same time, you're like, you know, you could just create a telemetry plugin, right? Now, again, I love what Morten's written, and I love the proposal, and I'm sad the proposal has been closed down. But the reality is you can create a plugin, you can get a whole bunch of different people, including key plugin people, to activate it, to turn it on, to do something, and you can do it outside of core and still collect a ridiculous amount of valuable data. So yes, there's Matt and leadership and how core makes decisions and what goes in and what goes out. I have discovered in way more marketplaces and way more environments for software development that getting upset at the rules on the playground is a bit of wasted time. The playground is the playground. Like if you take your kid, I don't know how many of you have kids, but if you take your kid to a playground and it doesn't have swings, you have to look at your kid and go, do you still want to play with the rest of this playground, or do you want to lay down on the ground and throw a tantrum? And no parent likes the kid that lays down on the ground and throws a tantrum, because you're like, I brought you to the park. It doesn't have swings, but it has a jungle gym, and it has a swirly thing, and it has it has a little train around the outside, and you go, enjoy what's here. WordPress is its own playground, and you can decide to play it and play by the rules and play with what's there. And then you can also add and do your own things, or you get on the ground and throw a fit because it's not doing it the way you want it to do it. And again, I'm not characterizing anyone's efforts as having done that, because I haven't seen it done in a long time. But I know that's our inclination, right? Our inside is to, like, I should write a blog post about this. I should get angry, and I should rise up the people and revolt. And you kind of go, to what end? Build it in a plugin, build it as a theme, build it as a hosting product, build it as whatever. Just do your own thing, and stop worrying about really how this is playing out, because this is just one angle on how decisions get made in WordPress. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense. Be the change that you want to see. Don't wait for other people to do it.
Isn't that a song?
Probably.
I thought it was a fantastic answer, Chris. My only feedback about it is on Morton's defense. I met Morton at the last, also I think we bumped into one another at the last Word camp in San Francisco. But it's been an ongoing theme for Morton about how fundamentally decisions are made in the WordPress community. And I think it's been an ongoing thing on our panel shows, because a lot of commentary websites have been pushing a lot of stuff about that, basically.
And first of all, I love Morton. So I think Morton's fantastic. But part of that is what we're writing about on our blogs, right? And that is the definition of insider baseball, right? Because no customer I have ever interacted with has even known who Matt Mullenweg is, right? Like, you say Matt Mullenweg and they're like, who's that? And
the guy behind The Simpsons?
Yeah.
That's what most people think.
Right? So they're not, they don't go to word camps. They don't listen to podcasts. They're not reading the news. So this is all just stirring up in, like, just us. It's just and it's not even us as in 50,000, 100,000, 2 million people. It's us as in like 5,000 people, right? 5,000 people who are reading we read Post Status, and we read Tavern, and we watch these podcasts. There's 5,000 people who are getting upset about something that the rest of the world doesn't even know is happening, right? There are people who are never, ever going to ask the question, how are decisions getting made in WordPress? Because they're like, I want a website, right? I don't know if I told you, but I want a website, or I want a store, an online store. And how do I get my store done, right? And if your attention and your thinking is focused on Matt, or decisions and core, and who's a core committer and who's not, and who should be, and how come this patch isn't getting committed, it's very easy to get pulled into that and spend a lot of time thinking about it and writing blog posts about it. And there are people that write blog posts about it, including myself at times, have written a blog post about it. And you realize the audience that normally comes to your website is looking at this going, I don't understand. What is this, right? And so if you're an agency, right, or you're selling a WordPress product, the insider baseball posts don't do anything. It's akin to writing release notes. Most customers don't read release notes either, right? They're like, it's just, that's not interesting to me. Tell me a good story. Help me with my business, right? But navel gazing doesn't help. So I appreciate Morten and the rest of the folks that are having this discussion, because it's a worthwhile discussion to have. But let's be clear, it's not the majority discussion that's happening outside of the 5,000 people, right? The rest of the world is just going, I need a website. Should I use WordPress or not, right? And I need to do a store, and should I use WooCommerce or should I use something different, right? Should I go with Shopify? They're asking those questions, not how are these decisions getting made? And so the decision-making process, especially if it's being bounced about by developers, right? If developers are having this conversation, that's where my response is to say, but you're a developer. Like, you can build any answer you want without anyone else's permission. The only reason you need Matt or Automatics or the foundation's permission is if you want to play in that playground, right? But if you don't use .org's repository as a way to distribute your code, you can do anything you want, anywhere you want, however you want, at whatever price you want, and you don't have to worry about it.
So I actually do agree with you, Chris. I just want to get one other question. WordCamp USA, on a positive note, I thought the 3 areas that Matt said that resources are going to be really focused on was a very positive change in, I'm looking for the right word, Chris, change in focus. And they were really the decisions to get away from predefined releases to a more, I feel, a more logical approach was great news. What was your reaction to what was announced?
So I've been building software for 22, almost 23 years. And the announcement was neither the first nor last time that intelligent and well-intentioned people will make the exact opposite argument of the previous argument they made when they made the previous argument. So if you recall the last WordCamp San Francisco, Matt made the case that we need to have scheduled releases, because going on with code until you finally feel like you get it right without any kind of time-sensitive pressure is what ruins the release. And now we got the scheduled releases are what's ruining the ability to do the right things, et cetera. And I'm totally honest, right? Let's be very clear. In 2 or 3 years, we're going to go back to, we need scheduled releases, right? Because if you do this long enough, I've been managing software development, particularly in the enterprise software space, but I've been managing software development for 22 years. And every 2 years, I change my mind. Every 3 years, I change my mind, right? And we always go back and forth. There's only a limited, finite set of options anyway, right? But what happens is you go down a path until that path doesn't serve you, and then you make the case for going down another path, and then you run that till it doesn't serve you, and then you go back to the other. So it's not shocking to me, but I won't get super upset about it. I wasn't happy with the decision the last time they did it, when they said we're going to have 3 to 4 releases a year, because I'm like, oh, for certain customers that's horrid. So I'm also, I'm not a fan of we're only going to have 3 focuses and we're going to have no release dates. I'm not a fan of anything if it's poorly done, and I'm a fan of all the things if it serves you and it's well done. So I listened, and I listened amused, right? Because I was positive that it wasn't that long ago that Matt made the exact opposite case. And I'm positive that in a couple of years, Matt will make the opposite case again, because this is the way it works in software. So I didn't have too much of a reaction at all, because I'm like, yeah, I could have told you we're going to go this way, and then we'll go the other way, right? Sometimes you need to focus, and the 3 focuses at some level make sense. Sometimes you need to focus because you need to get the whole ship focused on the right things and saying, this is what we need to move forward. The larger the organization, right, the harder it is to get everyone to focus, which means you have only one of 2 approaches to go. Either get everybody focused on 1 or 2 things, or split people up into teams and get a lot of different people focused on a lot of different things and start making small advances, but iteratively and quickly. And you'll watch us go back and forth, back and forth. That won't shock me.
Oh, thanks for that. Johnny, got a question, and might let the panel, and then we'll wrap up the podcast part of this.
Yeah, my last question is, to bring it back to the very beginning. LiquidWeb, they've been around a long time. They're trying to make an impact on the managed WordPress market. So they're doing lots of efforts, and part of it is appearing on podcasts like this, doing various efforts to get the word out. When it comes to marketing on any level, but specifically in the WordPress ecosystem, how important is it to be involved in the community as a whole, as a marketing effort?
Well, I'll speak a little bit about that. I think, for several years, LiquidWeb really wasn't known in the WordPress community. So I think that there's an aspect of getting involved in the community, getting your name out to those 5,000, 6,000, that group of WordPress, diehards, right? Getting them to understand that, hey, there is another player out there, and here's what we're doing. I think that in opposite that, though, there's a much larger group of people that as Chris has kind of pointed out several times, that they just want a website, right? They want this website. They've chosen WordPress, and we need to go after them, right? Because ultimately our customer segment is that mission critical site, and so we want to find people that are agencies, that are developers, designers, that are going and working with those customers that are building those sites, so that we can say, hey, how can we help them? How can we be a part of what they're doing? And I think that's where we start to focus more on than just the WordPress community.
So I think being part of a community is fantastic. It's critical, not just for the market. So we think about marketing, right? You think about, it's pushing messages out, right? But how do you know that the message is the right message? How do you know that the message is a working message? So you need a feedback loop, right? And a feedback loop, strangers are not going to come back and tell you, hey, I didn't like the way you shared that, right? A feedback loop normally comes from your community, right? A way to say, it's not just about, I need the community so I can sell more. It's, I need the community to give me, to be my friends, right? And to give me the honest feedback, to say, I think that's good. I like what you're doing. I like where you're going. Or I wouldn't do that, right? That's very scary to me, right? And here's why. Or I didn't understand what you were even saying right over there. And you go, okay, let's see if I can try and say it again better. So I think one of the things, I've spent many years building relationships and rapport with folks in the WordPress community. And at this point, right, as we get ready to roll out some new product and new features and what have you, is I count on those people to be able to give me the feedback loop so that I can refine the message to the rest of the world. I'm not just selling to 5,000 people. I'm not just selling to the people that go to WordCamps or that sponsor WordCamps or that go to, visit Post Status or Tavern or watch podcasts like these. My community is my set of friends who will be honest with me, right? And then I use that feedback loop to then message to the rest of the world, right? The people who aren't thinking about WordPress as an insider, but they're just thinking about getting their site done, right? Eddie Bauer is never going to show up at a WordCamp. Neither the Eddie Bauer techs, no, the decision makers, whatever, the guys who run the website at Home Depot are not going to show up at a WordCamp. They don't read WP Tavern. They don't read Post Status, right? So I want my messaging to stick with clients like those that we have. But in order to do that, I need to test it in and work in a community where people will be honest and give you the feedback that is right on. So I think for everyone, having a community like that and being part of it allows you to get that feedback loop in. And so it's critical for everyone.
I think that's excellently put. Corey Miller just recently said something like that as well. You know, having sidekicks and getting honest feedback from trusted people within your community is so vital to messaging.
I'm sure I stole it from Corey. Just
there you go.
Somehow.
Cool. Well, we want to be respectful of your time, so we'll let you get on with your day. You want to thank LiquidWeb again for sponsoring this episode and you know, the continuing partnership that we've had. I want to remind our listeners that you can go to liquidweb.com/WordPress, enter that coupon code WP-Tonic 33 to get 33% off your first 6 months there. Hopefully we've made a good case, you know, for going with LiquidWeb. And with that, AJ, how do we get a hold of you?
I'm on Twitter, AJ Morris. Pretty much all the web these days is something AJ Morris. So you can hold me that way.
And Chris, how do people find you?
I'm at Chris Lema on Twitter. I blog over at chrislema.com, as well as a new one I'm spinning up on LiquidWeb. And I have a contact form on chrislema.com if you want to reach out as well. So lots of different ways to reach me.
Definitely. Sally, how do we get a hold of you?
I'm at Sally Getch on Twitter. WP Fangirl is my website. And if you can spell my name, you can find me. I'm unique in Google.
Number one, the only one. Lee, how do we get a hold of you?
Just head on over to WPinnovator.com or on Twitter, Lee Jackson Dev, where I live.
And soon, angledcrown.com as well.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
Unmute, Jonathan.
Can't hear you.
There's a lot of people who would like to mute me. No, not really. It's quite easy to get hold of you folks at Twitter at Jonathan Denwood. I do reply to my emails as well, not straight away, but if it's obviously a genuine question from a real person, you get a reply from me, and that's at Jonathan at WP-Tonic.com.
Excellent. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm lockdown_. You can find me at my website, lockdowndesign.com. And so for the WP Tonic posse, in effect, we want to say adios, sayonara, arrivederci, and get your dose.
Whatever that was. Cheerio.
We're still recording, folks, on live. So, but I thought it was excellent.
Aloha. Thank you, Bill. Yep, there you go. Gotta add that one.
Oh, thanks, Bill. Hopefully you enjoyed the questions, Chris. Is he still around?
Yeah, it was a great podcast. Thanks, guys.
I tried to ask some intelligent questions. I don't know if I achieved that, actually.
Oh, sure. They were all good questions.
It's fascinating how people look at entering a market, really, isn't it, Chris? Because, you know, getting that right balance of features that which will differentiate the product from the competition, that it's an art form, really, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah. Yep. It is. It takes a decent amount of work and more often than not a decent amount of experience, but when you do it and you do it right, it's a lot of fun.
Do you actually think WordPress in the next couple of years is you're still gonna see some really graphic, some real strong growth in the use of WordPress to the extent that Matt has kind of indicated?
I think we'll see. I think we still have some growth for sure. I think the biggest area of growth that I think we're already seeing and that we'll continue to see for the next few years is in e-commerce, and that's good news because there's a lot of opportunity to work with people who are doing, again, for our target, right, mission critical sites. They're doing real sites. It's not pictures of my puppy and me in matching sweaters. It's like real stuff. And so we're excited to see that growth and see WooCommerce take off, and we'll be rolling out some products that come alongside that to be able to do that well. right? So, yeah, I think there's still growth for several years.
All right, that's fantastic. Keep my retirement fund going. I'm an old man already. Not a young person like you, Chris. Any of the panel got any questions for Chris and Maurice before they go? Have they gone? Have they gone as well?
Is that hat a fedora, by the way? I just want to.
This is it's a Belsky hat, so it's a form of, I think, a fedora, but it's leather and
fancy.
And it you know what? I'll tell you, here's the reason why I wear it versus the other fedoras I have. It's leather, and leather does not absorb cigar smoke like all the other hats I wear. So I want to be able to put a hat on in the morning and not realize what I smoked the night before. So that's why I go with leather.
I'm tempted to unleash the people that are still viewing and promote them as panelists. Are you up for it, Chris?
Yeah, we got a couple more minutes. Go for it.
Right, let's promote. First of all, you're gonna become part of the panel. So if you've got no clothes on,
I have to go. By the way, guys.
Right, see you later.
Bye, Lee.
Good to meet you, Chris and AJ. Take care, guys.
See you,
Take
Lee.
care.
Right.
Thank you, Lee.
If you've got no clothes on, I suggest you get something on right now, so I'm going to put we've had somebody drop out already. Let's promote panelists. And
Giving new definitions to the year without pants. Oh, it's the wizard.
the wizard.
The wizard.
Is anybody out there? I've just promoted you.
I don't know how I came on. I was like working, and all of a sudden it popped up. I was listening in the corner. I got too much stuff going on.
So Bill, I think you just put your top on, didn't you?
I'm getting really good stream flow. You like this? I was up till like late last night.
Right.
Hey, Chris Lema. I met you at Sacramento 2 years ago.
Yeah. Hi, Bill. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm like the WordPress guy. I started learning about 3 years ago. Getting there, aren't I, Jonathan?
Yeah. So, did you manage to listen to any of the actual conversation, Bill?
You know, I was bummed out. It popped up, and I logged in, and I looked at my schedule, and I didn't really catch it all. I'll catch part of the replay. I did listen. It's good. WP-Tonic is a very good show. And I'm bummed out, but I try to work and listen at the same time. I guess we're not supposed to multi-management. Been working really hard on screen flow and presentations and process. You know, I yesterday I was using in the Atlantis. I was using little iPhone 6s. It hooked up to their sound system, which comes perfect sound, and it came out perfect. You know, the phones, different places, they're amazing things. Little phones.
I love that you're on a green screen because there's so much I can do with that.
Oh yeah. And I have it right now. It depends on, I popped up on accident. That's what it's amazing. So you can turn some lights on here too if you want to.
Yeah.
Get the little lights going.
He's got the power, folks. He's got the clicker.
But
so you got any?
Do you have a question?
Got a question, Bill?
Oh, not really. I apologize. I didn't know you guys were going on. I have no idea how I popped up here. That's what's really weird. I was clicking stuff on my screen, I guess.
Well, many of us wonder that, Bill, actually, how you pop up.
I'll go away. The wizard will go away.
All right.
Let's see if I can get rid of myself.
Right.
Let's see. I don't want to mute myself.
Thanks,
I guess
Bill.
I got to kick myself out of here. It's weird. I'm not a Zoom expert. Hey, I do have a question. And Chris, well, as long as I got Chris on, I was just talking to a guy yesterday, and how, we do a lot of stuff for free to get business. We own real estate companies and other things, but if you can make someone $1,000, you should be charging $500. If you make someone $2,000, charge $1,000. I mean, repetitively. How do you decide how to charge people and what to charge people for? And you got to be good enough. You have to have clients. You have to demand. Just a thought. Pricing.
Yeah. Do you have the next 12, 14 hours free, and I'll give you my full answer?
Right.
So pricing is one of those things where the more you understand the customer and the more you understand the world that they're in, the better you can articulate your price. So the mistake most people make is that they set their price by looking left and right at other vendors who are offering something similar and saying, okay, this is kind of what the market will bear. In certain markets, after a long amount of competition, where the market has turned into, where all the pressure is pushed out, all the margin, that may make the case. But when we're talking about services, the reality is it's still not commoditized. There's still a lot of different ways to deliver different kinds of value. And so looking left and right leaves you only looking at what you see, not what is actually happening behind the scenes. And so it gives you really bad data. So the better you understand your customer, and you're talking about real estate, right? The real estate, if you think about the real estate broker, right? How much does a real estate broker spend in the course of a year on technology, right? If you don't know that number, then you don't know what portion of that number makes sense for you, right? And you don't know what portion of the problem you're solving. Let's say that you're solving a marketing problem for the broker. How much does a broker spend on marketing in total, right? And if, when I was much younger, I went to a real estate broker to sell them some software, right? And I said, I have this great software, and I gave them my price. And I don't even remember what my price was, but the woman across the table looked at me and said, that is my entire budget for all of marketing for a year. There's no way I'm spending that with you for one weekend at this, at a local festival. And I'm like, I didn't even know, right? Like, wow, right? So more often than not, the trick is understanding your target, understanding their world, understanding where they spend, understanding the problems they have, understanding if I show up to a real estate broker right now, and I don't know that they spend money on back office and front office and what they're doing and how they're playing it out and where their pain points are, and I just say, I have this great nifty little tool, then I will likely be pricing it wrong, and I will likely not be able to maximize my margin there. On the flip side, if I know this is on average across all the brokers in the US, this is on average how much they spend on technology, this is how much they spend back office, this is how much they spend front office. In that front office, I'm only solving 25% of that problem. So this is the maximum budget I can afford. But I am actually going to be able to create huge margin from that portion if I can make the case right. And here's the story I'm telling. And the story is the one hitting the pain points of the things that keep them up at night. And I show up and I go, here's this is. I can take a maximum return from that, right? And so it's not so much the dollar value. It's not the, charging $500 versus charging $1,000, charging whatever. It's understanding where I fit in the mix, understanding where the pain that they're having fits in the midst of their pain. I only like to solve pains 1, 2, and 3. I never want to try and show up and solve pain 47 because it just doesn't get the same level of traction and people don't spend the same kind of money solving problem 47. So, I have to look at knowing the first rule of thumb is understand the market that you're stepping into, understand it well enough that you can actually make the case for what the price should be. The second part of that is that if I understand the market, right, is my messaging, is the narrative or the story I'm telling one that resonates well, and the most effective way I do that is I understand the way people have spent money already. So again, let's say you're building real estate websites and you talk to, and all you're doing is working with agents, and you're talking to agents and you go, how many websites have you built already, right? And they're like, I've built 6. Oh crap. You've built 6 websites already and none of them have worked? Well, the reason I built them was for leads, and none of them are getting me leads. You go, right, okay. So how much have you spent on those 6? Well, I spent, $200 on this one and $500 on this one and $400 on this one and $2,000 on this one. So you're like, I know how important this is to you by knowing how much you've already spent on this kind of problem. I also, am I talking to someone who only has, who only does 1 deal a year? Or am I talking to someone who does 1 deal every 2 years? Or am I talking to someone who does, 15 deals a year, right? The value of that solution differs dramatically. And so their requirements and needs are different, and how I price that is different. So, so when I go to tell that story, right, I might tell that story and say, look, if you're someone who's already spent $2,000 on a website, $2,000 on 5 websites, right? If you're someone who's done this over and over and never gotten the leads that you wanted, and the main thing you need is leads, I'm going to show you my solution, and my solution is going to cost you another $2,000. But here's what's going to be different, right? This is not about the website. It's never been about the website. It's all about the leads, and the leads means you need multiple endpoints, not a single endpoint. And you need a lot of ways to get that same content or that content collection in a lot of different places. And here's my network, and here's what I'm doing for you. And then they go, that's what I've been missing, and yes, I'll pay you the money, right? So the narrative you tell, the way you tell it, and particularly how you accentuate the existing pain and the existing investment into that makes a lot of sense. So suffice to say, in the shortest way I know how to answer this, it totally depends, but it requires a crap ton of research, a ridiculous amount of investment. By the time I put pricing together, people will think I'm an agent or a broker, right? They will be like, this guy knows so much. He knows more than I do about real estate. And you go, no, but I know because I've talked to 25 people, right? And I've gone deep into those 25 stories, and I found the aggregate dynamics in that space. And I understand where people are spending money, and I know how to price for that market. And then you go to car dealerships, and it's a completely different world, and you start all over again, right? So I've been in, I think now 30 vertical markets, and every vertical market I step into is a lot of research and work. And then it helps you tell better marketing stories. It helps you do better product development, and it definitely helps you do pricing better. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've watched Jonathan the last 3 years evolve, and he's hitting the real estate market too. It's absolutely. I know your customer, know your client, and then have a product that works. And sometimes you have to, you got to find your niche and your products. Hey,
Yep.
If you don't mind, a couple things. Just I don't know how much you've got into this.
Well, actually, Bill,
I
just want to ask there's another person that was watching, and I'd like to see if they want to ask a question.
One last question. I'll get off. I'm figuring out how to get off of Zoom here. I thought I should know how to use Zoom better. But if you follow up on the use of what AdWords is doing, YouTube and Google now are really clinked together trying to compete against Facebook. Yeah. And what you see there going on, and I'll get off and listen to off the record. If I can figure out how to, I think I'll just click on my face here. I can mute myself. Let's see if I can throw myself off of here.
There you go.
Myself. Let me try to get off of here too.
So Bill, all I'd say is yes, they're definitely, YouTube and Facebook are working together to try and do stuff. But I think the feature set that Facebook gives people is still far more compelling. With YouTube and Google, I can present an ad. Totally do that. Present a link, present an ad, present an interstellar video ad in the midst of a pre-roll and what have you. There's lots of things I can do. But with Facebook, I can present an ad, and then if you have seen the ad, then I can present you a different ad. If you've seen the ad, gone to the page, but not clicked on the call to action, I present a different ad. If you've seen the ad and gone to the page and clicked the call to action, I can present you a different ad. So there's a whole level of life cycle interactions that you can do in Facebook that you can't do in Google and YouTube. And that's why I think Facebook's probably going to win this game until Google and YouTube figure out something different.
I think it's a fantastic answer, Chris. My co-host knows I have a growing fascination with Facebook. My two passions are Facebook and WordPress, really. Chris and Morris, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's just been, you just blow me away, Chris and AJ, and I think it's been a fantastic show. And hopefully you've enjoyed it, Chris and AJ.
Yeah, I think Denver said he had a question.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm an enterprise customer, and I had two questions about the multi-user and the security. So as an enterprise user, could I sign up as a WordPress multi-site and then do domain mapping to my customers and have LiquidWeb do the managing? And then the second one was follow up on the IDS. And we know that CXS does it for cPanel, but are you exploring other IDS systems that can run in the operating system to do something like CXS does? And that's my two questions.
Yep. So can you, the first question is, can you as a customer buy LiquidWeb, spin up with Multisite, tons and tons of sites, and then have LiquidWeb do the management? And the answer is yes and no. today, this very second, you can do it outside of the managed WordPress products, right? So we have a cPanel product. You can spin up Multisite there. You can then manage all the stuff, and then we can still do some management. It is not as powerful as the product that AJ and I are rolling out, which have rolled out and keep interfacing over and iterating on, is the managed WordPress portal, which is where we said we want to be able to do more than just Multisite. We want to be able to do not only domain parking, but domain redirects, right? So you have 5 domains, but they all redirect to the same single site, which is a completely different use case than Multisite, but is things that customers want. And so when we started with Multisite, we didn't have the redirection piece. When we started doing the redirection piece, the Multisite was breaking because obviously there's issues related to redirecting URLs. And so we pulled the Multisite back. We're now getting ready to roll Multisite back in and the redirection piece so that customers can do either and both. And that will roll out in the next couple weeks. So at that point, you'll be able to do the stuff you talked about on our managed portal platform. So hopefully that answers that question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So then the next question is related to what CXS does for mail, and think about it for kind of for everything else. Our security team is constantly looking at solutions for server management and security management and all the stuff that goes with it. So we use a variety of infrastructure to provision and manage our containers and orchestrate those. And of course, not all of our products are container-based, but specifically our managed WordPress product is. And so part of what we're doing is rolling out more container management for some of our other products, and then having the security guys come in and take a look at this now, because we're changing the underlying infrastructure for more of our sites. So my general answer earlier in the podcast and now is similar, which is to say, because we're making changes to our internal infrastructure, we're changing some of the tools that are available there. That is having an actual consequence on questions of the OS, questions of how you patch, questions on the network, and therefore how you do security. So we have a generic security team, not a managed WordPress security team. And the generic security team is coming back around to take a look at everything we've done with Kubernetes and container management. They're coming back around to look at that and say, okay, what do we want to do to enhance security for all of our products, not just managed WordPress. But managed WordPress is kind of, flicking the earlobe of the security guys, going, look, because we're doing something new, we need you to look at this all over again.
Yeah, because see, I'm concerned about bad themes and bad plugins where that's where the hacker can get in. So what are you guys going to do in the manage to make sure that an injection can happen?
Yeah. So the likelihood, right, is you think about it as multiple different kinds of intrusion, right? Multiple different vectors that come into, in terms of a security lapse. And so one of them is brute force, and we already have brute force protection. So that means if someone is attempting to hit and harm one of our, or part of our sites, right?
I think it's 2 gigs that automatically comes free, and then you upgrade from there on the denial of service, right? Something around there.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of the plan, but we have it. So if it's happening on one part of the network, right, we can alert that across the entire network, so that when it finally gets to you, we already know. Like we're like, well, nope, sorry, I know that you're malicious, and I'm gonna cut you off, and that protects you from DDoS. It protects you from all sorts of other issues, simply because we've built that network to support that. The flip side of that is not brute force, and not something specific to that kind of vector, but it's really related to a gap in a specific plugin, right? And so when you have a specific plugin, there's a lot of different dynamics related to what breaks on a plugin, but more often than not, that plugin, because it's being used across the broader WordPress ecosystem, we find out that there's a problem. The issue isn't the intrusion, or the issue isn't the gap in that plugin. The issue is updating that plugin, right? And unfortunately, people don't update plugins, right? A couple of years ago, Gravity Forms had a issue with their plugin, and they discovered that there was more out-of-date plugins for people with paid and active subscriptions than out-of-date plugins for people who didn't have it, right? So you're like, this is insane, because you're paying for the update and you're not getting it, right? And you go, that's because they're not clicking the button. So one of our features is to update for you, right? That's the one we talked about in the show, to allow you to make sure you're on the latest to protect you long-term from the security. The other is that we work with a whole bunch of other hosts in the WordPress space, so that when one of these hosts catches a vulnerability with one of those plugins, all of us coordinate together to patch and roll that out across the board. So for the big ones, the ones that you've heard of or have made the news in the last 3 or 4 years, we have ways to mitigate those issues almost immediately. So we have a couple strategies that are already working for us today. They're already in place. They're already good to go. The question is, are there additional strategies we can look at, right? One very simple one that we haven't investigated yet is actually not looking at your site from the code level, but looking at your site from the Google level, right? So it doesn't exist today, but one of the proposals for some of the bots we're looking at building is to actually go to Google and do a request back for the keywords and stuff for your site that we know is on our network, right? And seeing what Google's presenting. Because Google presenting a defaced or a Viagra ad, right, is something that happens on the Google level. It doesn't ever happen on your site. In fact, if you look at your site, you'll still see your site correct, because the way these Viagra ads are working is they are targeted to specific browser versions from specific IPs, et cetera. And so you're protected. So you keep seeing your site looking right, but Google sees it wrong and the rest of the world sees it wrong. And so building out automated bots that look from the outside in and catch the issue and then circle back to us and go, okay, now we have to find the issue, is an easier way to detect it than scanning code all day long. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. And then a follow-up on that, are you going to have like an approved list of stable plugins and stable themes that you should use? Because there's a lot of bad themes out there.
Yeah, probably not. The moment I make a list of stable themes is the moment that stable theme no longer is stable, right? Because they're like, yay, we made the list, and they stop doing stuff. The moment I make a list of stable plugins is the moment that I tell malicious people which plugins to buy so that they can inject crap into the next version of that stable plugin. I'm not making these things up. This has actually happened, right? So hosts have made lists of stable plugins only to watch that stable plugin get bought by another company. The company injected all sorts of malicious code into it. And because Automatic's approval process for plugins basically was a rubber stamp on plugins that were already in the repo, the code came all the way through, the host let it go all the way through, and 15,000 sites were affected. And so you go, no, that is not a strategy that works. I know it's a strategy everyone wants. I know everyone asked for it, but it doesn't work. So we will probably never do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much. You've provided so much value today. We know you got other things to get done today.
You just blow me away, Chris.
Definitely.
Chris and Morris, you just blow me away, basically. I don't know what to say. It's been a fantastic show. I've enjoyed it so much.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, you take care.
Thanks,
later.
Chris.
Bye.
Thank you, AJ.
See you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fantastic, wasn't it?
Did we record? Are we recording this part?
Oh yeah, we're still live on Facebook and we're still recording it.
Right. Cool.
And,
very good.
What did you think, Sally? I thought it was fantastic.
I thought it was great. I mean, like most people, I can listen to Chris Lema for hours.
I just thought, and he was so generous with his time, him and AJ, weren't they? Answering the questions, and I just thought the stuff we covered was we have covered a lot of ground in this interview, haven't we, John?
Yes, although the inside baseball issue makes me think a bit about. Yeah, I mean, we're sort of rehashing the same stories that everybody else is rehashing when we discuss the news, and I don't know how valuable that is to the people who listen to us, or really enough about who the people who listen to us are. It's it's the part that would be least interesting to me, because I've already read all those news stories, and like, we can all have opinions on things and talk about them forever, but I don't know, is that is that helpful to our audience if we're talking about stuff for WordPress professionals? Do they already have they already seen this stuff?
Yeah, you're totally right to bring that question. It's a question that me and John have talked about as well, but it's a duality, really, Sally. Obviously, by discussing those news stories, the thing that you slightly criticise, you're actually joining in. But on the other hand, on pure audience and other factors that are out there, new panel shows, and also panel shows that includes latest news topics, are some of the most popular in the podcasting world. Actually, Bill would know a bit about that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Bill, that panel shows and news shows in general are some of the most popular in podcasting?
I think there's two things. I'm interviewing a lot of podcasters right now, and it's interesting to see the different models. I want to talk about two things. The panel is the easiest to produce, and you get a lot out of it. That's why we podcast. We podcast to meet people, have relationships. Like Sally, we've had, dinner over here. I think I know you pretty well watching it. You just get to know people. So I think it's a relationship thing that you may do it for other reasons than just getting a big audience, but you do learn from it. I mean, you had Chris Lema on today. That's amazing. Chris is tough to get on. I mean, this show has credibility, and it takes time to build up, and you learn. So the panel's a great base show. Everyone should have some kind of panel to be on, I think. But I interviewed this girl who she made $5,000 last month. She's making enough money off her podcast. She does 2 podcasts a month. It's called Congressional Hacker Review or something like that. And she uses a Zoom S4, and she records into it. And she does she reads over and over her script, and she sends out the script she wants to her producer, and they put it together. And then she gets donations for the site, and people commit to listen to the site. And she does a great job. She puts a lot of work into it. She's from the Bay Area. So those are the two basic ones. Those are the two extremes. But I think a panel is a great thing. This is, I'm really impressed what you're doing on Zoom. The thing is, like, I had this on my schedule. You got to make it really easy for people to get it on their schedule, and it popped up here. It's
got to be the same time all the time.
Yeah, that too. I mean, that's just taken any time. The other thing, just a side note, on my research, do you guys know when the best time to send an email out to people generally is?
Probably like first thing in the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m. or something like that.
Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, the only thing I say about that is that I haven't done any research recently, but I did do a fair bit. And I came to the conclusion, Bill, that there wasn't any recommended time because it really depended on the audience.
Well, the MailChimp has done a lot of work in this area, and they looked at personalities. So if you're looking at the overall best time to get the most people, and that's business type people who are doing email all the time, not your casual retired business person who really doesn't care, paying attention. You know what I'm saying? Or people are into it. The best time is Tuesday and Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning in your time zone.
Yeah.
And then it will be open actually later, like Thursday, Friday, unless she gets buried Monday morning, but Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'm thinking about just launching the podcast at 10 o'clock on Tuesday or Wednesday each week for time. I think you hit it. What's today? Today is Wednesday. So you had a good time.
Yeah.
But the good time for the show, that's a good time for an email. I don't know if it's best time for the show.
I would say that it's the best time for the show to get people because we do have people that watch from different places, like East Coast time.
Yeah.
Or like
that's true.
Yeah. I will say this, when it comes to what moves the needle on our show and who I believe that our audience is made up of, like what you were asking, Sally, I really tend to think that we have more people who are WordPress junkies, people who are either working as, independent developers like we are, or people who are building their own sites, or people who are like marketing people, than people who are just customers or clients. And the reason I say that is because the shows that seem to like really jump up are the ones that have to do with either tools like associated with building a website, or most recently when we were talking about like pricing. Those ones, shows that are kind of around that, seem to do really well. And I also tend to think that the people that are listening to us are kind of people who are part of the insulated like WordPress community. And the reason why I say that is the panel shows do better overall than the guests, no matter who the guest is. And I will say that the people who are like tend to be bigger names in WordPress, sometimes they move the needle and sometimes they don't. But people who are outside the names of people who are outside the WordPress bubble tend to not move the needle as much. Even though I think like, that's a big person, they don't necessarily move the needle as much. Though some people that we've had on that are big names don't move the needle as much as you think they would. So I would say that it really comes, I really do believe that our audience is more insider than it is outsider, because of just seeing like what gets downloaded.
Yeah, but get back to the point Sally was making. It is a contradiction, Sally. I am aware of it, and so is John. That because it has been an ongoing thing, and I do agree with you. Part of me thinks that it's a bit dreary to go on the same, but that is what the Tavern and a lot of other WordPress news websites have been pushing, Sally.
But not
well,
not,
yes, but are we a news website or not? I think that's kind of the point. Is the purpose of our panel to talk about the news, which often eats up a big chunk of our time, or is it to talk about is it to talk about our topic? And since our podcasts as a whole seem to have been shorter, because there was a while when they were routinely 2 hours.
That's too long.
Only 2 hours,
right?
Yeah,
I mean, right, which
Yeah.
is probably too long. But if you announce it as we're having a panel about X, and your first 30 minutes are actually about what's in the news that everybody else has already talked about.
Yeah.
I do really see your point. I think that a lot of the format that we have is just because that's tradition. It's just what we've had as a format since Bill and Jonathan started the show. I think there's a lot of like formats that are still there. So I don't necessarily know like what would be a thought. I do think like 30 minutes for like the news is it's
probably too long, isn't it?
It's a little bit too long. So, I mean, it would probably be better to just focus on one or two stories.
Yeah.
But sometimes like we have, like you could just pick one story and it like is 20-minute discussion. So I don't think our purpose is necessarily to be a news outlet, because I think there's so many other places that do that better. Or even like a secondary, about that. I do think like when we keep the Saturday shows to about a minute or not a minute, but an hour 15 or less, between an hour and an hour 15, I think that's a good length. I think longer than that is too long. So I don't know,
The way I think about it, so
it bears discussion. I mean, honestly, Sally, you've been on WP-Tonic. I mean, really since like maybe like what, episode 4? Like really?
Pretty early.
It was fairly early participation in the panel. And I mean, part of what we run into is just the fact that, well, the more people you have on the panel, even if everybody only speaks briefly on a topic, it takes up time. And so then you have to think, okay, how are we gonna handle this so that we're sure that we still cover our main topic, which is presumably what people turned into, because it's not like we're breaking the news on the show.
No.
By the time it's Saturday, some of those news stories are getting fairly elderly.
No, and I agree with that, and that's something me and Jonathan had talked about before. We don't want to be like water cooler where everybody has like 10 seconds to speak because there's like 20 odd people. That's too many as well.
even though it's a great podcast, every podcast has its style, and the water cooler has its individual style. And we love you, my uncle and Bridget.
Uncle Tucker,
Uncle Tucker. But they do have their individual style. One thing you could do is maybe like once a month have just a news panel show, but the other shows you just do a topic. That might be as
no, it's something to really think about. I mean, too. I mean, I would be inclined to just like, kind of put stuff in people's, like have discussions about like, things that are like relevant. I mean, I think there's a lot of like fluff stories out there, but I think like having like bigger discussions, kind of like when Morton was talking about telemetry, that's like a bigger like picture thing. Those are the discussions I like to, see happen. So I'm all for stuff like that.
So, because the other thing, Sally, if we hadn't had that, I don't think he would have. It's obviously something he's passionate about, and he came on, and it gives him the opportunity to talk like 15 minutes. And then obviously he's got a baby and he's got other commitments, and he had to go, which is fine. And then we went. So
yes. I have no objection to Morton's thing, because I think that was less about this is in the news than about
it's a bigger idea.
Right. The idea of, how do we proceed with making WordPress something that's really going to serve people? And we've talked about various aspects of that, like, all of our frustration with the editor and so on. I think it ties into recurring themes versus just, like the fact that Morton and Matt disagreed about it is not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is, how do we get, user data to help us create a better product?
Well, yeah, we have to discuss it. We're open, Sally, and we'll discuss it with you. I think I'm going to end the phase.
Hey, Jonathan, quick question. What do you have coming up the next month or so? Do you have an advanced itinerary on the topics in the area? Because if you could maybe put a post for people to look into, like learning management systems, those themes. They used to talk about themes in different areas.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, Bill. That's one thing that for the panel shows, we are going to pre-discuss them, and they're going to be put on our Blab page. That's WP-Tonic.
Blab.
Blab.
It's still Blab. We didn't change the URL.
They're going to be outlined the Saturdays.
Yeah.
On the actual Wednesday shows, we typically do not use Zoom. We're still using Google Hangout, and we don't invite audience for that. We normally just record it because obviously a lot of the people that we're interviewing, Bill, they got time pressures, and they just cannot spend the time on there. If you understand.
What's your URL and Blab page?
Just Blab.
WP-Tonic/Blab.
Yeah. Okay. I can tell you who the next 5 guests are. Like, we have March booked already. So the next 5 guests that we're going to have are going to be, for the Wednesdays, they're going to be Mario Petchef, Emily White, James Laws, Jackie is going to get a solo show, and Shane Malaw comes back as a return guest. And but usually what me and Jonathan have been doing is this kind of a new thing since we're integrating Zoom, is we're sitting down at kind of like the end of each month and saying, what do we want to do for the Saturday shows, and then we go and set them up in Zoom. So we did that.
Which is we couldn't do that really with Google Hangout because of its limitations. And
we would try, but we'd try, but sometimes we get like a couple ahead, but yeah.
I'm always looking for your input too. I'm going to launch probably this week, the second shot of the podcast basic course. So any input you guys can give me too on concepts and ideas. I was big on Google Plus for a starter, but now I'm just telling people to use your iPhone to record into for a starter, to get going and then hook everything up. But I'd like to talk sometime, just listen to it. I really enjoy afterward talking to you guys a little bit right now. It's kind of nice. The Zoom, you're not going to keep Zoom, right, Jonathan?
Sorry?
We both have like a year's subscription. Me and
we got your subscription?
Yeah, we both do. We
the
both do. Yeah, he has one and I one.
Luckily, obviously, the show is sponsored now, Bill, by LiquidWeb. and their sponsorship has been made a difference. So I do pay for the webinar part, which is additional monthly fee.
Yep.
Lana's LiquidWeb are gracious with their sponsorship, and they've been a great. I hope they continue with us because they're just a great company in general. Example of the quality we've just witnessed. So I'm really keen for them to keep being a sponsor, and I think they will do, because I think both me and John have done our best to prove value to them, haven't we, John?
We've tried to sell them some hosting plans for sure.
Yeah, we've done our best. But get back to your question, Bill. It's an additional $40 a month on top of my, and it's reasonable amount. But I think as a platform, it really is a very quality platform, because we looked at other ones after Blab imploded.
Fire Talk.
And we got very frustrated because they kept on going, and then they would either be bought up or they were flaky, weren't they, John?
Yeah,
I know people who use Zencaster and like it quite a bit.
The Zen is still relatively beta Zen. I interviewed that guy early on from Zencaster.
Well, he doesn't do video though, does it? I don't think it does.
And it can be a resource using up some of your bandwidth depending on what you're doing.
I haven't actually tried it, so I have no idea whether it does video or not. I like Zoom, and I don't know that you would need the whole extra webinar package. I think simply the ability to have a group on for an hour, which you get in the $15 a month package, would probably be fine.
No, but I disagree with you there, Sally, because the benefit you get for the Zoom is you can you get a pre-developed landing page.
It's good.
That you can send people, and then you can map it out on the Blab page. So me and John can map out 4 episodes and put
so you need the webinar version to schedule stuff.
Yeah, for that schedule page, and that's all inbuilt in that package, Sally. That's one of the reasons why and also you can open it so you don't ask for email addresses, but if you do that, you don't get the landing page. And getting people to sign up and getting access to
right. I think for that it depends a lot on, do you want a live audience or not? So if you're having, a group show and you want to be able to have panelists, but it's only your panelists that you need to get signed up, then you might not need to make the landing page and stuff.
No, but if you get people, it's impressive when you get like 30 people come in live, like you've had a couple times. Hey, one thing too is another area is social credibility. I've been playing around. I think I discovered something that helps podcasts build social credibility. I just tested. If you look at Karen's site, she got by the way, for $2, I got 5,000 views on YouTube for Karen. $4 of her open house. I scared to death. I thought I was like blowing money, and I talked to Google about how it happened. I actually hit a broadcast email to realtors in the area, and I had a little bit of money on Google Plus ClickWords at the same time. And I set it at $0.01 a click. And then it stops. You only go to your budget, but it just kept on going. But I think for social credibility, maybe Jonathan, if you want to get with me, I can show you how for $10 you can get at least 1,000 views on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
I figured that out. I cracked the nut on that. I mean, I think that's one of my quote unquote secrets, if there is any secrets in this business. But things are always changing. But I think that might help. I brag about this podcast all the time because I think it's a good podcast, and I talk about it to other people.
We try.
We're
trying really hard. I mean, and I see these people making these lists of best WordPress podcasts, and
Well, I think if you could show maybe 1,000 or 2,000 views on YouTube of it, that could be some social credibility for people to say, hey, because that social credibility is huge. So
yes, and there is the question of how do these people decide best? Because I think a lot of the best X and best Y lists are based on like pure numbers. It's not like they
copy the list. They copy the list that they saw on the other site.
Yeah,
right.
That's what I've determined.
Most people's like lists of best plugins, I think, are determined by their affiliate payouts.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's and the other thing too is this show never made. We set up I've done this. I've set up like 7 or 8, 9 podcasts now. I'm setting up a couple more. But we made new noteworthy on the real estate show at week 7. Believe it or not, it's like a fluke, but we did it because all of a sudden Jonathan threw like 10 likes at all at once. It was bizarre, the content. But new and noteworthy really is new. It's not a big deal. But I think stability long term and social credibility.
We're getting there, man. We're getting there, and I think
I know I watch a little bit.
I thank you guys for starting this, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, I like to come on once in a while and watch it as it evolves, because it could be, someday you'll have 2, 3, 4. I think 5,000 is the magic number where you really are powerful in this niche.
We are getting 5,000.
Oh, that's a month though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm talking an episode.
Oh, per episode.
Well, I don't know anybody that's getting 5,000 episodes in WordPress. Nobody. I don't believe it. I do not believe that.
Well, there's plenty of people out there. I mean, the world is out there, so I wonder how.
Well, I think if it's a general business, one of these that I kind of crunch my teeth at, about making money online, and they make money from their podcast because they're talking about money making. It always kind of puzzles me. But as a niche, I think we can still get more growth. But I think when you're talking about 5,000 episode, Bill, you're really talking about it can't really be a general niche topic. It's got to be a much broader topic.
Who knows? I mean, you argue that all the time. I think it's getting out to the work camps more often, speaking and talking, getting your name out there. The other thing too is, Sally, and I think about this all the time, is the meetups who are WordPress meetups. I mean, there's some valuable information coming out of your show. Why don't more meetup people watch these?
They do. I run into them all the time.
I don't think our Reno people do, Jonathan.
Well, my meetup people are not going to watch it live at 9 a.m. It's not.
No, but they'll listen to it maybe on the podcast.
They may listen to it afterwards, but they are never going to join us live at 9 a.m.
Bill, you can't judge. With all respect, I really did attempt, and I spent a lot of time, and we were getting increased numbers, but it was taking up so much of my time writing a really fantastic keynote presentation and then trying to market it, and we were getting like 19, 20 people turning up to some of the word Reno, but they're a bit of a unique crowd, really, aren't they, Bill? Even you would admit that, wouldn't you?
I will say this. I mean, there's certain like WordPress podcasts that are doing really, really exceptionally well, because it's like high profile people who have been doing it a long time. Mm-hmm. I would say that we're definitely better than a lot of people that are out there numbers wise. Yeah. I do believe that. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think part of what Chris was saying about the person who enters the market late applies in our case too. Yeah. I mean, there have been WordPress podcasts that have come and gone since at least 2007.
You got to keep it going. You just got to keep it going.
Right. So some of it is just, it takes time.
Even if you put
we have been doing this for almost 2.5 years now.
2.5 years is nothing in podcast time.
No.
Nothing.
Nothing. So it'll be 3 years in June.
Right. The podcast that I've been most involved with longest has been there since 2005.
I'm going to record this for part of my show. My show. Just hold a second.
We're going to have to go now, Bill.
I know. I just recorded part of the desktop. Look how beautiful my green screen is.
Yeah.
Chris Lema, even. I should have got Chris Lema. It would have been great.
Right. I'm gonna stop.
See, as soon as I said I'm going to record Jonathan for the podcast, I do an example. Hey, so here's I have 2 last questions. I've got this new online course. I'm using Lifter and I'm using a LearnDash. I'm comparing them both. It's a short course to compare them. Mm-hmm. Tough to do those. Tough to set those up, by the way, because we'll talk about that later. But Jonathan, all of you, real fast, for your course, I want to ask Jonathan and then the others, why do you do a podcast, and what's been the biggest struggle with your podcast?
Well, I do the podcast because the personal relationships that I've built up through it have been much more stronger than my attempt to build such relationships in Reno, actually, and because the amount, it's been an educational process. I've just been blown away with Chris Lema. I know he's impressive, but I honestly thought he was on top of form for this actual show. I'm not saying that just because we organised it. I honestly believe it was a very impressive. He was extremely impressive today, and provided enormous value over a number of topics. I was just blown away. It's personal relationship promotion. It's been one of the major things, and it's a differentialization of you from the crowd, basically.
So I'd like to get your point. And John, you've come in and I've watched you. You've really taken it. You've really helped out the backside. You're a great partner, better than the other guy was there.
Yeah, you know what, though? I remember when you guys came into the Sacramento meetup.
Yeah.
And I remember the day. And you said, like, hey, hey. Yeah, well, yeah. And I remember you guys were targeting the people who head up the meetups.
Yeah.
But you saw, like, a presentation I did, and you said, like, hey, do you want to be part of the panel, too?
That was a good meetup, by the way.
Honestly, Bill, like I said, you and Jonathan gave me a break. You gave me a chance. Be part of the panel, sit up here when a lot of people wouldn't have. And, I'm grateful. I'm grateful because, he handed me the ball and I'm going to run with it. So,
I think the three of us or four of us should go on a WordPress WordPress camp sometime and speak about podcasting.
Yeah, Jonathan did.
I know Jonathan's done it, but I'd like to go in on that because, it's sort of one of my products at the backside.
And actually, I was really delighted. I actually think it's not, I'm honestly saying this, folks. I did a small speed presentation at Sacramento last year, and it really went down quite well, I think, John, didn't it? I
thought it went good, yeah.
I had about a number of people email me asking for additional, and I actually sent them to your website, Bill.
Yeah, well, I need to, it's getting there too. I need to get back into, I was doing the police academy. I did my 4 months. By the way, I just got the deputy thing from the sheriff's department. Right, guys.
Woohoo!
Sally, why do you do podcasts?
Sally can do handcuffs now.
I'm not going to go there. But, I decided a long time ago, since, as I said, I've been involved with podcasting since 2005. I decided a long time ago I was not going to produce my own podcast, that was more work and more time.
Oh, you're a smart one.
So this was...
Hey, we're going to cut that from my friend.
Right? But the thing is, I found that in terms of like getting my name out there, being somebody who commented regularly on people's shows or occasionally, contributed a short segment or something like that was still extremely valuable. I mean, there were lots of people who came to know who I was because I was active on other people's podcasts. And this was, the days when pretty much your blog comments were like the place that people interacted with your show. So, and also when people would talk about having, listener-oriented shows, and so they'd make sure that, like, if you made a comment, they'd read it on the show and that kind of thing. And then, of course, people who made a comment, they listen because they want to hear you read their comment, and it interacts. But I knew that because, like, even the effort of producing a 5-minute segment was like, God, that's a lot of time. The planning, the production, the post-production, and that's just for audio. So something like this panel was a great opportunity because I get to, hang out and talk with smart people. So, in some ways I don't care if anybody listens to it because, I've gotten value out of it regardless. And, on the other hand, I'd like people to listen to it to help, sustain it and keep it going. But yeah, I think I've promised Jonathan an article about podcasting. And part of it is, before you jump in and start a podcast, think about whether your own podcast is the best place for you to start. Or you want to start with somebody else's podcast and decide, do I have enough to say and enough time to commit and enough that I'm going to get back from it to be willing to jump out there and do my own show? Is there a gap? Is there something that nobody else is doing that will mean that even the people who are already listening to 5 or 6 WordPress podcasts are going to listen because what they get from me is going to be something they're not getting somewhere else?
Excellent.
Also, so it's relationship building too, and then still, it's good. It's all well said. It's fun. I think it's as much social as anything. You just got to balance that with life. Lee, thanks. I really enjoyed coming on today. I appreciate the backside.
You're always welcome, Bill. You introduced me to podcasting, and so you're always welcome, Bill. I
appreciate that. And now, if you can just help me with my Lifter LMS, which I like, and LearnDash is like amazing. I've had to learn. Learning stuff gets to be. I don't want to learn a bunch of stuff. I'm using Genesis Dynamic. I want to just build on what I already know. But I've got LearnDash, which I'm learning LearnDash, and then you have to cook that into. See, it doesn't. Lifter has this is last technical stuff. Lifter has has both the membership and the courses. LearnDash, you have to have you have to use WooCommerce to sell, and then your Stripe, of course. And then, you can actually put Stripe into LearnDash too, but you need WooCommerce. So then you have to learn WooCommerce, which I've never really learned. I'm starting to learn it. And then you have to have a membership site. I should ask Chris Lema this. So I've got to learn.
Well, I had to set up a membership site. I don't think you'd be that keen to tell you, Chris. Bill.
But I'm just saying that's all three learned. I mean, but it's just like constant. It never stops, does it?
No, I understand. Yeah. Well, I'm going to end the live book and the recording. We covered a load of